that they had been authorized by the President. That procedure had not been instituted by the Justice Department until 5 years after the events in question. By injecting this element at the last possible instant before the jury retired, the fate of the defendants was sealed. On November 6, 1980, Mark Felt and Edward Miller were found guilty of allegedly violating the constitutional rights of American citizens. Their fines were over $8,000, but their total legal costs for defense, an amount raised by FBI agents and friends, exceeded $1 million. By 1975, the Justice Department under the Ford administration had come under the control of Attorney General Edward Levy. Since Levy had been a member of the National Lawyers Guild, the legal arm of the Communist Party, it was no surprise that a major portion of his time in office would be directed toward the destruction of the internal security function of the FBI. Levy inaugurated a series of guidelines for future FBI investigations. Under these guidelines, which were based upon recommendations of the National Lawyers Guild and the American Civil Liberties Union, the FBI could no longer investigate individuals or organizations unless there was already proof that they were planning a criminal act. In a federal lawsuit brought against the government by the Alliance to End Repression, the Justice Department further stipulated that the FBI could not investigate unless the crime was to be committed in the next 48 hours. But without the power to investigate, there is little chance to obtain such proof before the crime is committed. In the past, many bombings, hijackings, and killings had been prevented because the FBI had advance information as a result of prior months and even years of investigation. Now, there is almost no way to anticipate these crimes. The FBI also was told that it could no longer use informants inside terrorist or subversive groups if those informants participated in illegal acts. This sounds reasonable in theory, but in practice, an informant who refuses to participate in the illegal acts of other members of the group soon would be dropped from its innermost circles and would cease to be an informant at all. The man appointed by President Carter to run the FBI was William Webster. When confronted with the guidelines laid down by Attorney General Levy, Mr. Webster expressed satisfaction with them, claiming that they would clarify and simplify the task of the FBI. And simplify they did. Between 1973 and 1979, the number of continuing internal security investigations at the FBI dropped from over 21,000 to 147. That's a reduction of more than 99%. The number of special agents assigned to this work had been reduced to 143, an incredibly small force considering that during that same period, the number of KGB agents under diplomatic cover and operating as journalists or businessmen had grown to almost 2,000. In other words, there are about 14 times as many KGB agents in the United States as there are FBI agents to thwart them. And this is counting just foreign personnel. It does not take into consideration the much larger group of agents with American citizenship, which also is part of the Soviet underground. The CIA also has been weakened by administrative policies established at the top. Between 1964 and 1975, the intelligence operations staff of the CIA was cut back by 40%. Then in 1977, President Carter appointed Admiral Stansfield Turner as director of the CIA. After assuming office, Turner further emasculated the agency by firing 900 of the most experienced intelligence officers that remained. The intelligence agencies of friendly governments abroad are now hesitant to share information with the CIA or the FBI because their confidential documents could be given to the very people who are named in them. This as a result of the Freedom of Information Act. The threat of assassination of CIA officers in other countries, triggered by such organizations as Philip Agee's Covert Action Information Group, has made it difficult to recruit new foreign agents abroad. The morale of the agency is now at an all-time low. Even if a decision were made today to reverse all the crippling policies, it would take many years to rebuild an experienced, efficient, and high-morale intelligence operation. Although protecting the country against its enemies is a function of the federal government, state and local police agencies also have a legitimate interest in subversion, particularly as it may lead to acts of local insurrection or terrorism. And so these agencies also have come under heavy attack from the ACLU and the National Lawyers Guild. The tactic has been to raise the cry of police spying and to institute lawsuits designed to force these agencies to destroy their files and to stop the surveillance of communist activities. In 1973, for example, the New York City Police Department was forced to destroy 80% of its files relating to internal security, including information on Puerto Rican extremists. 2 years later, the Puerto Rican FALN terrorists exploded a bomb in Francie's Tavern, killing 4 and injuring more than 50 people. And on New Year's Eve, 1982, they exploded 4 bombs in Lower Manhattan and Brooklyn. The FALN has claimed responsibility for more than 100 bombings in the previous 8 years that have killed or injured scores of Americans. Had the New York police been able to continue the surveillance of violence-oriented groups, it is possible that this carnage could have been prevented. In Chicago in 1979, during a trial in which radical leftists were suing the police for investigating them, allegedly because that was a violation of their right to privacy, the federal judge ordered the police to turn over their files on the FALN terrorists to the attorney representing the radicals. The attorney, Jonathan Moore, was a member of the National Lawyers Guild, and 3 of his law partners were members of the above-ground branch of the Weather Underground organization. These files included police analysis of FALN bombing patterns and predictions of future targets which were to be given extra police protection, everything the terrorists needed to know to counter the police. In April of the following year, copies of these police files were discovered in an FALN hideout in Milwaukee. Confidential police files show, among other things, the sources of information, including informants and undercover operatives. Even when the names of these people have been omitted, often it's easy to determine by other data in the files who the informant is. This results in that person being expelled from the group under investigation, or in some cases, exposed to the danger of physical harm or death. In Los Angeles in 1982, involving a case in which the police were being sued by the ACLU, acting in the name of the Coalition Against Police Abuse, the attorneys demanded a complete list of all ranking ex-officers now employed in the nuclear power industry, a blueprint of all organizational units within the police department showing the detailed function of each, and a list of names of all the officers in each of these units. The intended use of this information can only be imagined, but it clearly would not be for the benefit of law enforcement. Because of the legal harassments of this kind, state and local police agencies have been forced to curtail or to abandon the surveillance of communist activities at the local level. There now are cities in the United States which the president has been advised not to visit because there is insufficient intelligence data to anticipate terrorism or assassination attempts.
If the Weather Underground organization had been allowed to run amok in 1969 and 1970, I don't know how many people might have been killed.